Si chiama Sapo.
Try? You have to.
You mentioned vacuum packing. What's the difference in how coffee is shipped? I mean, a lot of consumers, and by the way, I guess I'm squeezing two questions into one here. People are used to thinking of roasted coffees as getting stale. Don't green coffees, I understand maybe not forever, but isn't there a difference?
Right. There's the term stale, of course, really applies to once coffee is roasted. It's got a very limited lifespan in terms of being the coffee being oxidized, and it's really good for only a couple of weeks. I mean, I like a week or less, and I recommend people buy like a week's supply or less, and just keep getting fresh coffee. But the green coffee does have a life to it, and green coffee really is a living organism and does change. And we always endeavor to purchase what's called new crop coffee, so coffee that has just been harvested out of that current harvest. We try and get coffee that's from the beginning of the middle of the harvest, not the beginning of the beginning, because the farmers tend to, and the pickers tend to pick everything, because they're short of cash at that point, and they have pickers, so they'll pick things that shouldn't be picked. Generally, by the middle of the crop, it's easier to get the ripe cherries, which is just it sounds simple, but it's really important. And then coffee that's available later in that crop year is called current crop coffee. And if we run out of a coffee, I will cup those coffees in an attempt to replace something that I may have run out of. And sometimes we find something that's still suitable, and sometimes we just don't have a coffee in stock because I can't find something that's good enough. And then there's past crop coffees that are around once the new crop comes in, and those generally sell at a discount. We've never purchased those, and they tend to be, since they're sold at a discount, they go to things people use them for flavored coffees or dark roast coffees or blends or things that they feel they can get away with using something that's a little off its prime.
Without naming names, do you think there's anyone in the industry that sells a past crop coffee as a single origin varietal coffee?
I don't know exactly, but I would just assume that based on the number of participants, the likelihood of that happening is probably pretty high. And the character really changes the coffee. The reason you really want the new crop is, I mean, like you might expect, the new crop really is brighter. It does have a fresher taste to it. It's livelier, and as the coffee settles and ages in the green, it becomes it loses the acidity. It becomes calmer. It loses a lot of the complexity, and actually, if it sits in the sisal or burlap, which is how it's generally shipped, it can actually pick up that flavor and becomes what's termed baggy. I mean, you can sort of taste the actual burlap in the coffee, so it's not a pleasant flavor. And I've had coffee like that.
Is there, speaking of packaging, you mentioned having some of your coffee, the Cup of Excellence, shipped in foil packages. Is packaging becoming a big issue in shipping beans? Oh,
it definitely is. And in addition to vacuum packaging, the way you'd expect to see other food items, that basically vacuumed and sealed using either mylar or polyurethane, clear plastic. There's something else called a Grain Pro bag, which is so it's not a vacuum issue, but it is a superior to the traditional sisal or burlap bag. So that's a big issue at this point. People are becoming more focused on what's called seasonal coffees, so using the coffee as it comes in and only buying a limited supply, so that it's only they're only using it when it's the freshest of the fresh. I used to think baristas were opinionated until I met roasters.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah. So and the roast. I mean, when I started roasting in 1986, there were there are more coffee roasters in metropolitan Paris than there were in the entire United States. And I told my father also that, because, you know, my parents were, you know, when I went to college, they said, you know, maybe you should look at being pre-med. I said, you know, there are fewer roasters than there are brain surgeons in the United States. I said, you know, this is not a, this is a special thing.
It's good market.
Yeah, he didn't care. But talking about the freshness, and that has become a big issue, and there's been technology applied, and it definitely makes a difference in terms of how the coffee is presented once it's roasted. So the idea of keeping it fresh and the idea that it can be done differently than it's been done for the last 150 years is something that's come up relatively recently, and excuse me, and partly the high cost of these fine coffees and makes the expense bearable in the scheme of things, because doing this work is exceptionally expensive. But if you're buying coffee that's you know, $8 or $10 a pound at green, then if you're spending an extra 50 cents or $1 a pound for packaging, it's not such a dramatic part of the price than if you're paying $1.50 a pound and you're paying $1 for packaging to get it. It's clearly not an issue that most people are going to go for.
I want to ask you a question about roast. Just a few years ago, a short while ago, I was ranting about the fact that coffees are over roasted all the time, and I particularly picked on a large national, I suppose international coffee company for bringing this on us. Although really it predates them in some small regions. These dark roasted coffees, I was complaining about them, and now I'm going the other way. I've had lately some coffee samples, not from you, but from some roasters that are just, they're too light. I refer to them as coffee sushi. And what's going on?
Well, I think the initial move to darker roast was, we could probably trace to Alfred Peet. And now this is my theory. I don't think that it's ever been proven exactly, but Alfred Peet was he was a tea buyer and a coffee buyer, and he spent a lot of time in Indonesia before he went to San Francisco and began working as a coffee roaster for someone else before he started his own business. And I think he was frugal, and he knew what good coffee was, but you know, the difference between good coffee and great coffee may not seem that great in the cup, the difference, but it cost a lot more money. And I think that Alfred Peet chose to buy the good coffee, but not necessarily the best coffee, save a significant amount of money by doing so, and then if you roast it in a way that's a little darker than, say, how we roast, you really don't, the very delicate flavors and the acidity, the sweetness really disappears as if you roast the coffee dark. And so it tasted good. It was good coffee. It wasn't bad coffee. But if you took the best coffee and you took that coffee and you roasted it to the same level, it would taste extremely similar, because those fine items in the expensive coffee would be what I would term roasted over, and you wouldn't really be able to detect them. So I think that's the origin of that style of roasting. And but it was still good coffee, and people, you know, and fresh coffee, and people weren't normally exposed to that, so it became a little bit of a cult item, and people, you know, were buying it because it was better than what they were getting in the can. So and that became what they assumed good coffee was.